There's a particular pall over the black community, both what's going on at the Georgia Mall and just throughout the country, where there's no voice telling us. They played the scene when the Charleston massacre happened of those beautiful people at church, and Barack Obama got up there and sang Amazing Grace. But there was a sense, Trayvon Martin could have been my son. There was a sense of
Right.
connection of, again, Biden has come out to talk about what is the case of Ahmaud Arbery, and we're going to talk about it today. But there's like no leader in this nation at the top of the food chain who can speak to the pain that people are suffering, both economic, physical, and mental, and also to provide calm and a sense of that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and it's not a train headed our way. So I'm just struggling right now with that, and I probably shouldn't have watched that. And I have not watched the video of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. Have you watched that?
I watched it yesterday. It's been, when you speak about the pall that's sort of over the black community and just grappling with what all that means, both for us as a community, what it means for me personally. And, it's been a very, very, very difficult time. And I think that, seeing images of leadership in the past, whether, we're critiquing it or not, but leadership in the past that was at least sentient, that was at least able to, string paragraphs together in some sort of coherent way, that was at least able to speak to the pain or at least sense the pain or be in touch with the pain that the community is experiencing. That's a value, right? And, I'm one to critique President Barack Obama's, policies as much as anybody, but I think that we're all sort of recognizing what it means to live in a country that has such failed leadership and has such antipathy towards who we are as a people and is so incapable of even caring that we are experiencing pain, let alone being sensitized enough to formulate policies around it. It's really challenging. It's really challenging. I had not watched the video until yesterday. I had avoided it. I had frankly avoided much of the story.
Yeah, me
I just, on top of everything else, it seemed like so much, and it is. And it's as if it's just one more knock, one more thing, one more example that it happened, that he was murdered so close to the anniversary of Trayvon Martin, and that even, that we can look back between him, Tamir Rice, every person's name that we can think of and recognize that there has been so little progress and there has been so little movement towards anything that even looks like justice. It hurts. It really hurts.
I think I can't watch it because I feel fragile, emotionally fragile as relates to the conditions in this country racially. And I don't know what my breaking point is. So I'm just going to be like completely transparent. I'm already very warm. I recently had to speak with police officers about a situation that was happening in my neighborhood. And, a white cop came and I was hostile, like from the door, because there's a presumption that you don't see or value my community. And it's unfair, but it's compounding every time these cases happen. And I go all the way back, Lurie, to James Byrd. And this man who was walking along a road, minding his business in Texas, and to imagine that last night of his walking home and having a truck pull up and for people to drag him behind a truck. And I'm putting up air quotes around people because I don't know what kind of human being could get pleasure or relief or something from putting a chain around someone and dragging them behind your truck until their torso falls off, till their body splits apart. Now, they were convicted and sentenced to death, which is no justice really, because the license that those men had to do that to James Byrd is the same license that those men had to do that to Ahmaud Arbery, who was minding his business from all of the reports. And I have not seen the video. I refuse to watch it. But from what I'm hearing, he was running and they accused him that he must have been stealing something. Now he's jogging. He clearly has on shorts. I've seen the pictures. I've seen the stills. I have not seen the video. They wanted to kill him. Just like they wanted to do that to James Byrd, just like they probably want to do that to a lot of us.
And, it's not like we're talking about people who should not have, and I'm going to echo you to put the air quotes around people who should have known better, right? Like one of the gentlemen who was involved, part of the police department, which is part of the reason they've had to have 3 different district attorneys assigned to this case, because this is someone who worked with police and who was a part of the district attorney's office. And, so these are people who, up until the time they were no longer working in the district attorney's office, were operating with, Gregory McMichael, who was the 64-year-old alleged murderer, and his son, Travis McMichael, who's a 34-year-old co-conspirator. He's a tired district attorney investigator. These are people who, up until the time he was retired, had a badge and lawful license to a gun. How many black bodies did he interact with during the course of his time as a part of the district attorney's office where this type of racist motivation was driving his investigations? How many black men and women and children were victimized by him prior to this incident? This isn't a one-time thing. This isn't something that, and you don't get the benefit of the doubt of us not knowing if it was a one-time thing. My presumption is that you are racist until proven otherwise. When you are involved in these, you are completely ill-equipped to see my humanity until proven otherwise. And so, the video is heartbreaking because, this was a brother who was literally out trying to stay fit. And that these people literally, even when they call the police, the records seem to indicate that they were asked, similar to George Zimmerman, is something bad happening right now? They were asked, is someone breaking into this house right now? And the response they gave was no. It's all open. It's under construction. So they even recognized that he wasn't doing anything wrong. There's no rationale for this. This is what happens when our people continue to occupy the slave status in a society that built its entire foundation on a slaveocracy so that white people could generate benefits for them and away from us in a way that completely undermines the sanctity of our life.
We're going to have a conversation piggybacking off of the conversation we had last week around money. Marissa couldn't come in today, but we're going to have another gentleman who actually built off of the work that she did, who wrote a book about the wealth gap and the black buying power. And we're going to talk about that. But I'm reading Marissa's book, Barandaran, and she said that, and I didn't know this, 1820 until the Civil War, in the South, enslaved people were on money. And I had a visceral response to Harriet Tubman being on a $20 bill. And my initial response was not yay. My initial response was, I don't want to see Harriet Tubman, who was in bondage, to be on cotton. Like there was something wrong in my spirit about that. But when I read that in the book today, I said, there is, we can't imitate and mock and duplicate what other people do just because they have their, horrible people on our money doesn't mean that we need to put our goodness on the money. There's something hypocritical about it, actually. And, so I feel like on many levels, what you're saying is factual, but then I want to get to what do we do about it, right? Because I brought up James Byrd because how many years ago was that? Was that 25 years ago?
Jesus.
And we're now in a pandemic, where, clearly law enforcement can't do it. But law enforcement is doing what it normally does, which is why I'm saying I would like for there to be some concerted effort. Maybe it's the Urban League's job, because it was the Urban League's job to integrate businesses. That's what they trained people to do in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s in this country. Maybe instead of putting out a report every year, maybe you should go back to training people to integrate these institutions of horror and have a plan for, police, joining the police forces throughout this country, having collective test training so that, when they start to reject people based on these arbitrary things, that we have a system to thwart that, and be very mindful about going into the police force, the FBI, the military, not just at the private level, but at the officer level. So we got to come in out of college so that we can have some say, so that there are people there watching these people, because they're joining with a purpose. You just said that those guys, those alleged murderers, and we have to say alleged, the grand jury will decide if criminal charges are warranted. Hello? they're going to decide. But yeah.
Right, because they haven't convened yet. Right. So that's the other issue, is that the grand jury, this happens in the end of February. The grand jury has not convened because, COVID-19 and everything's closed. Oh, except wait, Governor Brian Kemp has reopened the state. So as, I think it was Bakari Sellers or somebody on Twitter was saying, you can go to the mall and buy sneakers in Georgia right now, but you can't convene a grand jury. You can get a tattoo in Georgia right now, but you can't get justice. And I think, while I love the idea of having more Black and brown people infiltrate these institutions, we have to then look at what does our reality look like when they have done that. Here in the city of New York, Black and brown men and women are a part of the New York Police Department. And I dare anyone to find me anyone who has had a negative interaction with police where Black and brown police officers were not also a part of that interaction. Why? Because not only are policing agencies often attractive to people who have these abusive type inclinations, former, quite frankly, soldiers and men and women who served, who have post-traumatic post-traumatic stress disorder, who are allowed sort of a free reign in these institutions. And the reality is, even if you go in with good institutions, I've often said before, we talk about going into the belly of the beast. But by the time you're in the beast's belly, the beast has tasted you, and its saliva has decomposed your capacity to resist. It has chewed you up. It has swallowed you down the esophagus. And that is when you get to the beast. And if there's anything of you left that can resist the impact of what it means to be a part of the belly of the beast, it often means you are not going to be a part of that institution for long term.
Well, that's why I brought up the organization, Lurie. That's why I brought up, because I remember interviewing a woman who integrated 4 of them. She and 3 other people integrated Prudential in the 1940s. And there was a 6-month long process of training, of, even the lunch counter sit-ins that the Urban League helped, they were trained, right? There was, this is what that looks like. So you already are building in that this is what they're going to come at you with. And they did it collectively. So they didn't just send one person into the belly of the beast. They sent a bunch of people, and she was one of 4 on one. But yeah, so we have to tag team this, but there has to be a plan that is both systematic and duplicatable, and that it is widespread and it's long looking, right? So it's maybe a 10-year plan of bringing into the most egregious police forces throughout this country, a minimum of X amount. And then we work with those mayors as well, because either you're a part of the solution or you're part of the problem. And we have to use activism on all fronts, right? And use deploy these organizations to make sure, because there's no other solution. This man was jogging in a neighborhood, minding his business, and he's dead right now. Ahmaud Arbery is not here. 25 years old, beautiful, beautiful young man. Not here anymore because of racism. And the Georgia Justice Department is doing very little. Stacey Abrams said that our system of law enforcement and justice must be held to the highest standards. And she's calling for a full investigation and appropriate charges and an unbiased prosecution. Kamala Harris is that's the first person that posted the video that I did not watch. I remember this was a couple of weeks ago. She said, "This sickens me to my core." And once I read what it was, I was like, I can't watch this. I can't watch this. Joe Biden has tweeted, the video is clear. Ahmaud Arbery was killed in cold blood. My heart goes out to his family, who deserve justice and deserve it now. It is time for a swift and full and transparent investigation into his murder. Kudos to all of them using their platforms to speak to this. But what are we going to do? 866-801-8255. I don't have any answers. Shout out to everybody on Urban View who has covered this. Clay Kane had Lee Merritt on, the attorney that's really involved in with the family in getting justice, and he's always on the front lines. He and Benjamin Crump and others on these cases. But I think there's a deeper conversation that we should have, and it all feels like it's part of this thing that we're in right now. Whether we talk about the disparate way in which COVID-19 is impacting our community. And yes, we had a whole ass town hall about it last week, but there are some things that we need to take responsibility for. This we cannot. The actions of racist ass white people is not our responsibility, but we have to build in some sort of Star Wars protection, some sort of system that protects us from these things happening, or some sort of response. There needs to be a response because people feel like they can just do this. And I don't know what the response should be. I know, an eye for an eye leaves us all blind. So we're leaving violence off the table. So let me just be clear before my words get misconstrued. But I think, loss of money, loss of property, loss of power has to be on the table. What does that look like and how do we get there? 866-801-8255. I'm frustrated on so many levels.